Hi there, this is Paul Murphy, and I'm giving you a presentation overview regarding the Big Hit, a charity golf tournament, which we ran, and in this instance in 2015, with me as project manager, and ran it for a not-for-profit housing association to raise funds for that organisation in May of 2015. It was run as a project, and we now have a new project management framework to add to it. So that's what I've attempted to do in this project. So I'll give you some information as we flip through a fairly brief presentation regarding the project. And you should be seeing now the overview screen, the Big Hit charity golf fundraising event in Bendigo, and raises funds for great causes, in this case a not-for-profit housing association. The project parameters were and this was a charter that was approved by the project sponsor for the organisation, ultimately to plan and deliver a golf event raising funds for our charity. The event to be held on May the 1st, which was a Friday, beautiful Friday as it turns out, luckily. And obviously we planned around a date that was likely to be a great weather-based day for an outdoor event such as a golf tournament, an all-day event. We aim to raise about $21,000 in gross profit after expenses, or after the bulk of expenses, netting around about $15,000 for the charity after the project management expenses were covered. The steering committee includes the project manager, that's myself, and as project manager, pretty much arms and legs for the project for pretty much the whole thing, from start to finish, from pre-approval phase right through to the end game. The host organisation's marketing manager became a key project organiser internally for the host organisation, and they had quite a role to play as well as being the recipient of funds. They were pretty heavily involved in aspects of project management with me, and in elements of coordinating an internal project team who were a fabulous resource and had a fabulous time themselves as well in some of the preliminary activities, and also in the event on the day based on the roles that they were assigned. As it proceeded. So shortly, we obviously developed a timeline early in the piece, and it was pretty consistent with the overview as it was planned for the timeline in terms of how things actually did roll out. This is a condensed version of the timeline. It shows the timeline only for the high-level project management pieces. And indeed, there's a much deeper timeline, a broader timeline and deeper for the entire project for every phase or component of the project as we work through the task structure. And you can see the events running there from the start of the year in January, pretty much. There were preliminary events prior to that, through to the day itself on May the 1st, the week of the 27th of the 4th, and then the next few weeks after that period of time, looking to the little screen on the side here. And if you look at the a broader timeline, that's what it looks like. So that's why we're not displaying it on this screen. There's obviously just too much information there for that level of detail. What about the roles and responsibilities? Well, the project manager, that is me. Obviously, the general overview of project management right through the project, consultation with the stakeholders in developing the charter, and then rolling out the next elements of the project, communication with the internal stakeholders and sponsors right throughout, communication with the event special guests, communication with the golf club where we ran the event after finalising which golf club we'd be using, or golf course that we'd be using, communication with playing teams and captains. There's quite a few components. Funnily enough, when you're on the organisational side of an event like this, that may not be quite so obvious if you've ever participated in one. And overall management, obviously the project. Finance manager for the host organisation did their own internal finance reporting, and in conjunction with the marketing manager, I handled things like communications with the host organisation, promotional activities for the event throughout. We had a fabulous external resource as well, or a couple of. I had a web designer working with me for a quite sophisticated website which enabled player registrations and sponsor registrations as well. And we used an external designer who designed logos, posters, banners, all sorts of things. We printed golf balls. There was a whole range of marketing resources that went with that. And this marketing manager was a fabulous resource, including some of the co-hosting elements on the day. Mainly, I did the co-hosting, or did the hosting of the event on the day, but that person was a great resource as well. Coordinating the support team of volunteers on site on the day, and this person actually handled quite some of that, working in tandem and as a team with me as we went. So the management scope management plan, I'll go back to the screen for that, and it was again a fairly extensive project for what seems like just a minor one-day event, but there's a lot of preliminaries in that. So the scope management plan in summary for this little presentation, you can see the same data that was shown at the start of the presentation with the well, you may be able to see it. The screen shows that in pretty small type, obviously, with the date, with the aims, with the overall objective, with event planning timelines, with the team, with deliverables, and then process for project change requests, which was something in practice that wasn't as sophisticated as what it might appear in this template. But obviously would be something to, well, in fact, it's one of the learnings from this program is that change requests should be a structured approach and not just relatively responsive and reactive as they were in practice. So in future events, they'd be more planned and, well, if not planned, documented and recorded and dealt with appropriately with a structured sign-off approach. Again, that it happened through the steering committee, but in a somewhat more casual way than we might do in the future. Scope verification was signed off by the sponsor, again, a little bit more casually in practice. In reality, here's a framework that would actually work really well for future events. A consultation with the host organisation CEO was important because he actually played an important role in the event itself. Fabulous speaker, and really put the case for the charity to the attendees at the event, which was important because, amongst other things, there's an auction and there's a whole fundraising component to it. So you need to be able to inspire people to spend a little more than what they might otherwise do. And lessons learned, lessons learned again was informal in practice, but in reality, a database of knowledge is being maintained and would be done so more formally in the future. So the work breakdown structure. So it's obviously there was a massive amount of detail in this project, and when I put together the WVS, it actually looked like that. In the highlight end of it, just to look at a little detail, just for the project manager component, that was the deliverables, the sub-deliverables, and down to work packages. So that progressed actually at that level of detail right through that entire spreadsheet there. So there's quite a bit to it, and you'll see that as we wrap up this little presentation with a few references to some photographs from the day. And part one of the sub deliverables, one of the work packages was managing a photographer for the day. And he captured some fabulous photos and videos. Project risks and approach were mainly, there were mainly three major risk areas or risk categories. The biggest one was if we did not at some point appear to be likely to achieve an adequate level of income from sponsors, corporate sponsors with a key income source. And we needed firstly a major sponsor who was a naming rights sponsor for the event, and then a series of gold, silver and bronze sponsors after that. Formally we did, informally we would have had a cutoff date. Formally we would need that in the future in a more structured way, and that'll be part of any future events that are run. Factored that in as a probability of 3 that we may not. I think, I felt more optimistic than that, but we probably would need to go for a probability of 3, an impact of 5, and overall inherent risk of fairly high risk with potentially damage done. So while it wasn't an exclamation mark, we had to monitor that quite closely with a cutoff date and so forth. And you can see that the unexpected availability of the project manager, who was a key party, would have been quite problematic as well. So in the future, we a lot of the work could be done, what was virtual, and we would need a better backup plan for the day itself. Was that person to have been not available on the day, for example? A sudden severe weather event, we would have had a backup date, and we should have that in a structured way in this sort of a project, because the impact on that would be potentially calling off the entire event for the day with all of the logistics around it, of which there were musicians, caterers, presenters, guest appearers who were coming from interstate, quite a range of impacts where some of that would be probably potentially more costly than we would have factored in fact. So really important risk area to manage and monitor more closely. Otherwise, so just to have a little look at some of the marketing materials. There was a theme around this, and that's indicative of the sort of theme that we used. There was different promotional materials. That's obviously for teams and players. Different materials for sponsors. Similar theme, but obviously a different focus. And the event itself, well, there's a bit of a glimpse into some of the shots from the day. There were many. And it was a really enjoyable and happy and successful event on that occasion. A lot of fun to organise, and really quite a lot of work. So that's basically it. That is the project management framework for the big hit in Bendigo in this case, and with the potential for these events to be held elsewhere in the future with other worthy recipients as the great cause behind the charity fundraising event. Okay,